a minute early. So I want to pick up on 265. Because Gandalf is mentioned, Tom Bombadil, and Frodo mentioned Tom Bombadil. Elrond says, brings up Tom Bombadil's name and says, you know, that's not the name I know him by. And he gives us another name on 265, Eowyn ben Adar, which is kind of interesting because Ben Adar is not a Middle Earth-ish, let's call it, name. It's Hebrew. Son of Earth. All right? Just kind of interesting. So, Elrond says, I should have invited him to the council. Who else has Elrond invited to the council? Who did he summon? From his opening speech at the council, he didn't summon anybody. Everybody who's there came of their own volition. They suddenly decided, we need to go. We need to go seek advice from Elrond and such. So, Aristor says, could we send messages to him? It seems he has a power even over the ring. Gandalf, not quite. I would say rather, the ring has no power over him. Okay? Because we didn't talk about it. If you remember, back in the chapter in the House of Tom Bombadil, Tom asks Frodo for the ring. And Frodo just hands it right over. And Tom does this, flips it in the air, and the ring disappears. And Frodo's like, you know. And then Tom puts it on, and it doesn't disappear. He gives it back to Frodo. Frodo puts it on, tries to go out the door, and Tom says, hey, Frodo, where do you think you're sneaking off to like that? I can still see you. So the ring doesn't make him invisible. He can make the ring invisible, and the ring doesn't make others invisible around him. He is his own master. And I think that kind of gets back to what Tom said. Who are you, alone, yourself, nameless? I am eldest. He doesn't, you know, I put on the board the other day, he doesn't depend. He doesn't hang from anybody else. He's kind of self-existing, so to speak. But he cannot alter the ring itself, nor break its power over others. Why? Because Tom's power is withdrawn into this little land that he set the boundaries to, and he's not going to go outside that, nor is he going to let something else from outside come in and ruin it. Okay? At the beginning of the council, Elrond says, it is up to us to decide the fate of the West, and to none other. The none other, I suggested the other day, I think it was this class, refers to the gods and the beings in Valinor. It also refers, even though he's unaware of it at the time, to Tom Bombadil. Okay? So, Aristor says, but within those bounds, that is Tom's country, nothing seems to dismay. Wouldn't he take it and keep it safe there? Gandalf, no, not willing. I mean, if we all forced him, he might, but then he'd lose it. Because he, you know, dances around singing songs, and he would, you know, pitch it like that, and it would. He says, no, we can't do that. Right? Glorfindel. Besides, that wouldn't solve the problem. That would just do what? Yeah, it would put it on the calendar for maybe a long time in the future. Okay? So, Galdor, top of 266. Glorfindel's right. Bombadil doesn't have the power to defy our enemy. He says, so, nor is it here, nor is it in the Grey Havens, nor is it in Lorien. Okay? He says, is there anybody who has the power to withstand Sauron? Elrond, I don't. Okay, so Glorfindel says, if the ring can't be kept from Sauron by strength, We've got two options. Send it over the sea to the gods, to Valinor, where Manwë and Elbereth, Gilthoniel, and all of them are, or to destroy it. Elrond, we can't destroy it. By any craft that we hear that is in Rivendell possess, or at the Grey Havens, or in Lorien. Gandalf's already told us, how can it be destroyed? There's only one way. You got to drop it back into the fires where it was forged. Okay? And Elrond says, and they who dwell beyond the sea, they won't take it. Why? Not their problem. It is a problem of Middle-earth's making. So Middle-earth has to deal with it. Okay? So Glorfindel says, all right, third option. Let's throw it in the ocean. Assume for a moment he knows about the Marianas Trench. Let's take it to the Marianas Trench and drop it to the deepest point in the ocean. Gandalf, won't be good enough. Why? Eons later, it will still be around, and it will be found ultimately. Which is why Gandalf says, actually, before Gandalf speaks again, Boromir kind of stands up and says, you know, Gondor stands, we'll defend the West, etc., etc. And Aristor says, okay, so here's what we're left with. To hide the ring forever or to unmake it. But both are beyond our power. To hide the ring forever is beyond our power. To unmake the ring is beyond our power. Well, that's a riddle then. Who's going to answer the riddle? Elrond. Nobody here can. Okay. And he concludes, as Gandalf has already told us in the Shadow of the Past, we must send the ring to the fire. Okay? And there's silence. Who kind of interrupts the silence? Boromir. Why? From everything that's been said, what is the ring? What's its purpose? What was it made for? How would Sauron use it?
As a tool to rule and conquer.
Okay. What kind of tool?
Magical.
Keep going. I'm looking for a specific word. It's a weapon. It's a weapon. Okay? Boromir is a warrior. Warriors want weapons to aid them to do what they need to do. So Boromir says, I don't understand all this. Why do you think of hiding and destroying? Why shouldn't we think that the great ring has come into our hands to serve us in the very hour of need? Why shouldn't we think, by fate, by chance, the ring is ours? Let us claim and use it. Elrond, nope, can't. We cannot use the ruling ring. That we know too well. Who's the we? Because the we there doesn't include Boromir. Is it the wise? Elrond, Galadriel, Gandalf, probably Galdor, probably Glorfindel, you know. Not Saruman anymore, obviously. Okay? He says, no, if any of the wise should claim the ring, what would happen? They would become the new Dark Lord. Or if it's Galadriel, the new Dark Lady, you know. Boromir. But we can still use it. We can turn it to good, you know, so to speak. Right? So Glon says, asks at the bottom of 268, what would happen if the ring's destroyed? I mean, let's just assume for a moment we do destroy the ring. What's going to happen? Elrond, don't know. Some hope that the three rings, the three elven rings, which Sauron has never touched, would then become free, and their rulers might heal the hurts of the world that he has wrought. But maybe when the one is gone, the three will fail, and many fair things will fade and be forgotten. That's what I think. So many things that are fair, like Rivendell, like Lothlorien, both places where the elves dwell. He says, it's my belief, those are going to fade over time. Guess what? That's why we don't have elves today. Because this world, it is our world. Tolkien makes that very, very clear. This is the planet Earth. A long, 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 long time ago. Right? So, Aristotle says, what strength have we for the finding of the fire in which it was made? That is the path of despair, hopelessness. Okay. Despair, des-pace, or de-space. It means out of, away from hope. That's the path of no hope. Only a fool, he suggests, or somebody with no hope would take that path. Or of folly, I would say, if the long wisdom of Elrond did not forbid me. That is, Elrond hasn't been wrong before, but there's always a first. Gandalf, despair or folly? It's not despair. Why? Despair is only for those who see the end beyond all doubt. Despair means what? You absolutely, unequivocally know the outcome. Okay? Give an example. If all of your phones suddenly started buzzing right now, okay, and there was a national alert, and the national alert was, let's think of something, totally unimaginable, so to speak. 40 megaton nuclear bomb is set off in Nashville, and your phones go psst. What do we know with absolute certainty is going to happen within the next about minute and a half? Okay, we might not necessarily die immediately, but what? Shockwave. It'd be faster than a minute and a half. It'd be probably less than 30 seconds. And what's going to happen after that shockwave? Then we might die. Because with that size of a weapon, there'd be a tremendous amount of heat coming. Okay? But probably, with this building would probably stand. Shockwave would knock over a lot of stuff, even 30 miles away. Right? That's an absolute certainty if that were to happen. You couldn't go, well, maybe we'll be lucky. Maybe we'll be that one chance that, Walnut Grove or Kirksey Old May will. No, not going to happen. Okay? Gandalf saying, we don't have absolute certainty that this will fail. And he's going to explain why. Right? What guides everything in Sauron's mind or heart, if you want? What does he think about everybody else? And by the way, we're going to see the same idea transferred in the Harry Potter novels. Mad-Eye Moody is going to say it about Harry and Cedric. The same kind of thing. Gandalf says Sauron is motivated entirely by desire for power. He can't imagine anybody not having that same desire. So he thinks if the ring is found, those who already have some power will do what? They will claim the ring. They will want the ring. So Gandalf is telling us, Sauron thinks, for example, that if I come into contact with the ring, if I come in proximity to the ring, I will want it to use it for myself. And the same goes for Elrond, and the same goes for Galadriel, and the same goes for Glorfindel, and the same goes for everybody. All right? I wasn't suggesting, by the way, that Mad-Eye Moody says Harry and Cedric have this desire for power. It's just that the character, I won't give it away, of Mad-Eye Moody is saying there how he thinks is how he thinks everybody else thinks. Okay? So, if that's his modus operandi, if that's how he thinks everybody else is going to think, what does Gandalf say we should do? Reverse psychology, right? If he expects everybody else is going to want to use the ring, what is never going to enter into his mind? That someone will want to renounce the power. That someone will want to destroy it. So if he can't even conceive of that, that is our hope. That we can try to do it. Okay? So, Elrond says, the road must be trod. Somebody has got to do it. Bottom of 269. But it will be very hard, and neither strength nor wisdom will carry us far upon it. Frodo says, I really do wish to have it destroyed. But I don't have, in response to Gandalf, because Gandalf says, you weren't chosen because of your strength and wits. But you must use such strength and heart and wits as you have. He introduces that heart there back in that chapter. Listen to Frodo, Elrond. Neither strength nor wisdom will carry us far upon this road. It cannot be by power, nor is it wisdom that's going to enable us to get to the very end. Kind of interesting. In the 1960s, Tolkien was a Beowulf scholar. At the time when he was writing this, he was probably the foremost Beowulf scholar in the world, the Old English poem Beowulf. In the 1960s, 15, 20 years after this is being written and published, there is an American scholar named R.E. Caskey, I think the R stands for Robert, who wrote an article titled Tudo as the controlling theme of Beowulf. Sapientiae et fortitudo, it's either theme or metaphor in the title, as the controlling theme of Beowulf. Well, what is sapientiae? Wisdom, fortitudo, strength. And one of the things he says in there is that in the poem, we've got people who show these two virtues. You got the character Hrothgar, the old Danish king, who shows wisdom. He does some. Shows wisdom. You have some characters who show strength. But the poet is going to tell us, and the character Hrothgar is going to say, Beowulf is the only character who has both. Okay? Tolkien has emphasized several times now, these two virtues together are what? They're insufficient. These two virtues aren't enough. What else will it take? Heart. Stick-to-itiveness. Okay? Just gutting it out. Courage, if you want. Elrond goes on. Neither strength nor wisdom will carry us far upon it. This quest may be attempted by the weak with as much hope as the strong. Okay? Yet such is oft the course of deeds that move the wheels of the world. Small hands do them because they must, while the eyes of the great are elsewhere. Because they must, because it's the small hands. I mean, let's think economics. It's the small hands that what? Keep the economy going. Keep businesses moving. It's, we hear an awful lot in the United States about small businesses. It's small businesses that are responsible for job gains when there are job gains. It's not the Fortune 500 companies. It's the mom and pop stores that are hiring 2, 3, 5, maybe if they're really successful, 20, 30, 50 employees. Those are the small hands. Not the UN, not Washington, D.C., London, Geneva. Pick your, place of power, so to speak. So, Bilbo stands up. Okay, I'll do it. Small hands. And they're kind of like, shut up, Bilbo. And Frodo finally says, I will take the ring, though I do not know the way. Why does he not know the way, and what does he mean, I don't know the way? First question is easy. If I tell you to, your next assignment, drive to Boise, Idaho. How many of you automatically, know how to get from here to Boise? Probably not many. Why? I think the odds are pretty good. You've never been there. And it's not fair to just go up to national, international and say, give me on the next flight to Boise. No. Okay? He's never been there. He doesn't know how to get there. This is the first time he's been outside the Shire. One of the times I taught in London, more than one of the times, several of the times I taught in London, was the first time some of the students had ever been on a plane. Their first time on a plane was an 8-hour flight. Okay, pretty big thing. One of those flights, interestingly enough, when we landed in London, because there were some problems, they didn't, land us at a runway and take us right up to the gate. They landed us on a runway and took us as far away from the hangars as they could. And all kinds of emergency vehicles were coming out, and people's eyes were bigger. Something had fallen off one of the engines in mid-flight. Right? So, I do not know the way also means what? He says, I'll do it. I don't have the foggiest idea how I will get there. Not what the direction is, but how I will be able to succeed. Elrond. And we're going to, zip through right after this. If I understand aright all that I have heard, I think that this task is appointed for you, Frodo. What is one of the reasons this task is appointed for Frodo? And it's not because it's the time for the little people, the small people, the insignificant people of the world to rise up and shake the councils of the great, even though that's kind of implied or said. What did Gandalf tell Frodo early on in the Shadow of the Past? Why did it come to me? You can't answer that question. But Bilbo was meant to have it, and therefore you were meant to have it. And that should bring you some comfort. Okay? If you don't find a way, no one will. In other words, in Frodo, if you fail, it's okay. Because if you fail, guess what? Every one of us would have failed also. This is the hour of the Shire folk, when they rise from their quiet fields to shake the towers and councils of the great. Notice it's not what Kate Blanchett's Galadriel character says in the voiceover. It's time for the little people to rise up and... No. The emphasis is on the Shire folk rising, doing what? Leaving their comfort zones. And it's not like they're shaking the councils of the great. They're going to march on Washington, you know. What are the councils of the great? Is that Sauron, you know, planning and plotting in his dark tower, and Saruman in his tower, and Denethor in his yeah, kind of a little bit, maybe. But what else is it? Why the Shire? Well, if you read the prologue, not the foreword, the prologue about hobbits, what are some of the things we learn about hobbits? What does Gandalf say in response to Frodo's, I need to leave the Shire. I need to take the ring. I need to leave the Shire. He goes, phew. You can learn everything there is to know about hobbits, and then boom, they said, I never expected that answer from you, Frodo. Because what's Frodo showing there? See, what motivates hobbits is to live fat, dumb, and happy. To have their multiple, not 3, but several, meals a day, to drink, to smoke, to not do much work, and just have fun. Not out partying, but friendships, talk, conviviality. That's the hobbit's life. Okay? And he's like, and here you're talking about going all self-sacrificing on me. Okay? What's Frodo physically look like when they start? Other than being short. He's kind of pudgy around the middle. Okay? Middle-aged. He doesn't do a lot of hard work. That's why he has a gardener named Sam. What's he look like by the time we get to the end of the novel? He's got lean. He's not mean. He's not a fighting machine, but he has gotten lean. All right? So, the ring goes south. We're going to skip a bunch. They try to go over Mount, and there's a map in the back that you can, kind of follow the journey. They try to go over Mount Caradhras, but it won't let them. It stops them. Okay? Why are they trying to go over Mount Caradhras rather than underneath it? What's underneath it? Mines of Moria. Who specifically does not want to go through the Mines of Moria? But remember? Nope. Aragorn. No. I'd rather try this. And in fact, he warns Gandalf. He says, I say to you, Gandalf, beware the Mines of Moria. Gandalf's been through the Mines of Moria more than once. Aragorn has been through the Mines of Moria. That's why he doesn't want to go back. He's been there. Okay? Who does want to go? Who is just itching to go through the Mines of Moria? What are the Mines of Moria? Who made them? Dwarves. Who wants to go? Gimli. This is like the ancestral homeland of the dwarves. This is like, a Muslim going to Mecca. I mean, this is really, really important for him. And he's like, oh man, I'll go. All right? Who is adamant not to go? Who says, I'm not going to go unless every one of you votes against me? Boromir, the mighty, powerful warrior. He's chicken. He does not want to go through there. He hasn't been, but he's heard tales. So, they do. And we have to watch her at the lake, which I'm going to skip. Not going to talk about. But they get to the doors of Durin, and the doors have inscribed on them, this, what looks like a sheer rock wall, has inscribed in Elvish writing, speak, friend, translated into common speech, speak, friend, and enter. And Gandalf's sitting there, and he's going, speak, friend, and enter. Speak what? Open sesame. It doesn't open. And he thinks of all these things, and finally he goes, dummy. Melon. He says, I mistranslated. It doesn't say, speak, friend, and enter. It says, say, friend. Say the word friend. Mellow. Whoop, and they open. They go in, and what does the watcher in the lake do? The tentacled creature, whatever it is. When it can't get Frodo, notice it grabs Frodo, nobody else. When it can't get Frodo, and they go in the doors, it slams the door shut so hard that there's a cave-in. Meaning, can't go back out that way. Now they have to go through. Okay? So they make their way into the mines. And in the chapter, Journey in the Dark Place, they're walking through, page 311. Aragorn kind of tells them all, don't be afraid. I've been with Gandalf on many, many journeys. He says, there are tales in Rivendell of greater deeds of his than any that I have seen. He will not go astray if there is any path to find. Okay, so that's encouraging. 3:13. They pause for the night. Big chamber, open chamber. And there's a well. And we know it's a well because there's a circular rock, stone, masonry wall around it. Okay? And everybody else is unrolling their, bags and stuff. Their blankets that they're going to lay down on and such. What does Pippin do? Stupid what they do in the movie. Because in the movie they've got like a skeleton, and Pippin takes a bone and drops it. What does he do? Well, there's a big old hole in the ground. You're in your tweens. He's 29, which in our world is like 16, 17. How deep is this hole? I'll admit, if I were there, I'd have done the same thing. Picks up a rock. Plunk. And almost immediately after that plunk, hammer sound. Gandalf, what's that? When he hears the plunk. Fool of a took. This is a serious journey, not a hobbit walking party. Throw yourself in next time, and then you will be no further nuisance. Nothing else is heard for several minutes, and then Gimli, that's a hammer. Or I've never heard a hammer. Gandalf's like, no, that's a hammer, right? And something's been awakened that should have been left to sleep. Okay? Notice, by the way, what Gandalf calls Pippin. Fool. I think, I'm not 100% sure about this, but I'm like 99% sure. There's only one person in the novel who refers to others as fools. Okay? And that's Gandalf. The other only person who might use it is Saruman in a speech that's going to come up later in the Two Towers. Okay? But my memory is telling me he doesn't actually use it. And it's only Gandalf. And Gandalf uses it several times. All right? I'm telling you this because this is a bit of foreshadowing. So, they bunk down for the night, and they make their way, and they find the tomb of Balin. Balin is one of the dwarves that was in The Hobbit. He came back to the Mines of Moria after Smaug was destroyed to kind of restart the engines of commerce and such. And for a while, Gimli tells us, there was trade going on between the Lonely Mountain and Moria, and then it all stopped. So they read Balin's log book, his record, called the Black Book of Mazertul. Go to Marquette University Library, go to the Tolkien archives. In the late 50s, Tolkien sold the manuscript material for The Lord of the Rings to Marquette University. Catholic University, Tolkien Catholic. He sold them because you had to pay a tax debt. They got it for like 10 grand. Now it'd be, 10 million. Anyways, you go to that room, and the room's about the size of this room. And in there, you can look at this black book of Mazurpul, because Tolkien made a mock-up of it. The whole thing. Blood smears, burned edges, the whole 9 yards. I mean, he was a nut job for authenticity, so to speak, right? So they're reading it, and they, get to the part where it mentions the drums, and then they suddenly realize there are drums, and they get attacked. So they escape, and they go down, 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 down. Meanwhile, Gandalf is left at the top of this stairway, guarding the door. And he tells us when he gets down, something was on the other side of the door, and it required him to speak a word of power. First he issues a command, then he had to speak a word of power. Notice there's a difference between those. According to wizards, a command is one thing, but a word of power is like a spell. Okay? That word, by the way, spell, exactly means that. It is both a word spoken and a word of power, a phrase of power. It doesn't mean how to correctly put the letters in a word. Originally, it doesn't mean that at all. Right? So, Gandalf says, I don't know what it was, but it was really powerful. So, bottom of 329. 2 big old trolls appear, throw it on, slab of stone and such, and this thing jumps up to the bridge of Khazad-dûm. So you've got an abyss here, and there's this little stone bridge that goes across. Wide enough for people to go across single file. So 12 to 18 inches, so you're going across like that. All right? This thing jumps up, it's got, or it doesn't, it's ambiguous. There's a reference to it has like wings, but they're not literal. It's not said that they're literally wings. It bursts into flame, top of 330. Legless. A Balrog. A Balrog has come. Now, what's a Balrog? Anybody know? It's Durin's bane, that is, the thing that killed Durin. It is a elf bane. It's the thing elves fear the most. Balrog is a Maya. Remember the other day, I think it was the other day, when I talked about Luthien Tenuvio and her parents? Her father was an elf king. Her mother was Melian, a Maya, a supernatural being, like one of the lesser gods. Okay? That's what a Balrog is. It's one of the bad lesser gods, servant of Sauron. Okay? Sauron is also a Maya.
Isn't it a servant of Morgoth?
Yeah, ultimately. Sauron was a servant of Morgoth. They were servants of Morgoth and Sauron also. Gandalf, a Balrog. Now I understand. And I'm pooped. That is, I got to recharge my wizard batteries before I can take him on. So, Gandalf walks out to the center and stands there and tells the Balrog, you cannot pass. I've had students say, I should put this quote at the top of my syllabus. You cannot pass. You cannot pass. I am a servant of the secret fire, wielder of the flame of Aenor. You cannot pass. The dark fire will not avail you. Flame of Idun, go back to the shadow. You cannot pass. Let's talk about the second thing he says. Wielder of the flame of Aenor. That Aenor is the old Western Nessa Numenorian city of the north. You got Gondor down in the south, Aenor up in the north. Okay, flame of Aenor, he's talking about the sword that he has. Right? Servant of the secret fire, however, is something entirely different. You don't learn in The Lord of the Rings what the secret fire is. You have to read the Silmarillion for that. In the Silmarillion, the secret fire is what Eru Ilúvatar makes the world out of. It's like the creative facility. The Holy Spirit, something like that. So I'm a servant of that, meaning I'm a servant of Eru Ilúvatar. Humans can't necessarily be that. I mean, yes, you can swear fealty and allegiance, but you can servant? Guess what? I shouldn't say this yet. Gandalf is a Maya. He's not from around these parts, in other words. Not originally. Okay? He comes into the world for one purpose, to counter Sauron. In fact, all the wizards do. All of the Istari, Saruman, Gandalf, Radagast, and the two unnamed ones, are sent into the world as counters to Sauron. Okay? So, you cannot pass. Balrog makes no answer. Its darkness grew. It steps forward onto the bridge. Notice it's over here. Gandalf says, you can't come over here. And it takes a step off. Like, come on. Make me, old man. It pulls out a red sword. Gandalf pulls out a white sword. What are Obi-Wan's and Darth Vader's sword colors? Blue and red, thank you. I didn't think one was white. Obi-Wan's is blue?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm going to have to watch it this weekend just to make sure now, because I'm thinking, Anyways.
I think Obi-Wan's is blue, and then Anakin's, when he starts, is green, then it becomes blue, and then green starts.
Okay.
It's definitely not white.
It's definitely all right. Okay. So, you cannot pass. Aragorn and the others are back here. He says, he can't stand alone. And he starts to run. Okay. Gandalf takes his staff, hits the bridge breaks. The Balrog falls, throws his whip, grabs Gandalf, pulls him down, and Gandalf gives us words that become an internet absurdity. Fly, you fool, as he falls. Why are those words an internet absurdity? Anybody know? There's an idea, started, I don't remember, 10, 15 years ago on the internet, that when Gandalf says that, he's telling Aragorn and the other members of the company how to get to Mordor. Fly. Leave the Mines of Moria, put up, the eagle signal for Gwaihir the Wind Lord, have Gwaihir come rescue you, and fly you straight to Mordor. Utter absurdity. Totally asinine. It's the dumbest idea in all the dumb ideas of the history of humanity. Okay? It's not what he's saying. Fly just means flee. You can't fight this. Which we already know, right? Because when Legolas goes, So, Gandalf falls, they make their way out, and they go to Lothlorien. Skipping a whole bunch. They get taken to Galadriel and Celeborn. Notice I put Galadriel first. Celeborn is the Lord of Lothlorien. She's the Lady of Lothlorien. She's really more important. Celeborn is not mentioned as being, when somebody refers to the Council of the Wise or the White Council, Celeborn is not usually mentioned. Galadriel is. All right? So, they tell them Celeborn and Galadriel, what has happened? Celeborn says, page 356, if it were possible, one would say that at the last Gandalf fell from wisdom into folly. There's that folly again. We were told at the end of the Council of Elrond, it would be despair or folly to attempt what you're talking about. Here's Celeborn. Really, 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 really old elf. Right? And he says, damned old fool, Galadriel gently upbraids / corrects her husband. He would be rash indeed that said that thing. Needless were none of the deeds of Gandalf in life. Those that followed him knew not his mind, cannot report his full purpose. However it may be with the guide, the followers are blameless. She's saying you can't blame any of these that survive for what happened to Gandalf. What's she really getting at? Especially the dwarf. Do not repent of your welcome to the dwarf. And then she talks about Moria. In Gimli's language, we're told. She looked upon Gimli, who sat glowering and sad, and she smiled. And the dwarf, hearing the names given in his own ancient tongue, looked up and met her eyes. And it seemed to him that he looked suddenly into the heart of an enemy and saw their love and understanding. Wonder came into his face, and then he smiled in answer. What has Gimli just experienced that Tolkien said fairy stories provide us? Recovery. He sees Galadriel as Galadriel ought to be seen. She's not an enemy. She is a friend. Why? What's the relation of elves and dwarves? Arabs, Israelis. KKK, NAACP. Pick your warring sides. Doesn't matter which ones. Arabs and Israelis work best. Why? Because that disagreement, to use an understatement, goes back thousands of years. Okay? He rose clumsily. So he looks into what he thought was the heart of an enemy, and he sees what? Love and understanding. He rose clumsily, bowed in dwarf fashion, and says, yet more fair is the living land of Lorien. More fair than what? My ancestral homeland. And the Lady Galadriel is above all the jewels that lie beneath the earth. He has just completely said something entirely undwarvish. See, dwarves love, O-R-E, more than anything. Why? Because what you can make from it. They're smiths, they're makers. And he says, you are the most beautiful, wondrous thing ever made. And she's like, oh, okay. Okay? So we get the Mirror of Galadriel. And notice Boromir, after this little, scene, Boromir says, I don't trust the lady. And Aragorn kind of slaps him down. Don't say anything evil about Galadriel. He says, the only evil that is in Lothlorien is that which you bring with you. Flashing, warning, red sirens, So we get the Mirror of Galadriel. What is the Mirror of Galadriel? It's not a literal mirror, right? Tolkien's using mirror in a very old sense of what's called a scrying glass, which can be a piece of glass, or it can be like this in magic. Okay? It can be a pool of water in a basin. And you look through at that to see the future or to see what's happening someplace else. Tolkien doesn't invent this idea, right? So she comes, she pours some water in. What time of day is it? Night. How do we know? Because the stars are shining. In particular, Arendelle, that star. Okay? So she asks Frodo and Sam, you want to see some elf magic? Sam's like, cool. What do I see? Different for each one. What does Sam see? He sees Frodo lying bound in a cave or tunnel. He sees his father, the old gaffer, kicked out of his house, walking down the street, homeless, essentially. He sees the party tree, the big old tree they had the birthday party under, chopped down. He sees smoke rising over the Shire. And what's the decision he comes to? I gotta go back. I gotta go back and stop this from happening. She says, you can't go back. You didn't want to go back before you saw this. You don't know that what you're seeing is going to happen. And Sam says, page 363. I wish I'd never come here. I don't want to see no more magic. No, I'll go home by the long road with Mr. Frodo, or not at all. What's the long road? We'll see this journey through to its end and then go back, or we'll die trying. He says, but if I do make it back, ooh, somebody's got to pay. Okay? So she asks Frodo, Frodo, you want to look? Frodo, what do you counsel? I don't counsel anything. Not for me to give you counsel. You can look or you can not look. Frodo looks, and ultimately, what does he see? Sauron's eye. Okay? And then he looks at Galadriel and he offers her the ring. And she's like, you're going to give me the ring? And in place of Sauron, you'll have a dark queen. All shall worship me and die. And then she dwindles back to the little Galadriel. And she says, I passed the test. The test is the temptation of the ring. The test also goes back to the elder days, and a test which her brothers did not pass. The desire for power and such. Okay? What else does Frodo see? Not when he's looking in the mirror, but when she raises her hands, all she'll, see me and, shudder and die and stuff. He sees a ring on her finger. And she says, yes, you perceive it now. She has one of the three elven rings, notice, which are hidden from Sauron. And Frodo's like, how come I can see it now? She says, because you weren't looking before, but I can't hide it from you. Don't try to find the others. They're beyond your power. Okay? They leave Lothlorien, and she gives gifts to people. We're not going to go over all the gifts. Actually, we might very quickly. Most importantly, what does she give Frodo? The phial with water in it, taken from the mirror. But it's not just water, is it? It's light. Where is the light from? The Star of Arendelle. Okay. Stick this away in your mind, because when Frodo and Sam are making their way through Mordor, Sam's going to wake up. He's going to go, cool, for a moment. All right? What else? Aragorn gets a sheath to pull his sword out of. The sword that's pulled out of that will never break. Sam gets rope and dust so that, he puts a piece of dust by something he plants. It's going to grow great. They all get cloaks. They all get the brooches. and such. They all get the Limbus wafers. Legolas gets a quiver for his bow and arrows, and maybe a bow. I can't remember exactly. What does Boromir get?
A warning?
Louder?
A warning.
Kind of. He gets a big old massive belt buckle. A big old WWF belt buckle. Why? It's shiny. It emphasizes his power. It's totally useless. It is totally useless. The things everybody else gets, they're useful for their particular tasks. Merry and Pippin don't get anything special of their own. Why? They don't have any particular tasks. Sam does. Frodo does. Aragorn does. Legolas does. Gimli does. What's Gimli get? 3 strands of her hair. He asks, well, if I could ask, because, she doesn't offer him anything. And he's, well, what's wrong, Gimli? Well, you didn't offer me. Well, what would you want? If I could not. If I could, 3 strands of your hair. She's like, why? And the elves are like, you're dead, man. Why? Because I would encase it in the purest crystal and it would become the most, and she's like, oh, Gimli. You got it. Okay? So they make their way. We will pick up on Wednesday, Monday's Labor Day, with the breaking of the fellowship and get into Two Towers. So get way far into Two Towers. I'm going to try and do 2 towers in 2 days. All right? Yeah, oh boy. And if I don't, I still think I can cut the first 3 Harry Potter books down to 2 days for each book, which should get us caught up.